Hi everyone, welcome to my bedroom. I hope that you had a good spring break. This class is composition. If you are not in composition, please go to one of the other playlists and watch the videos that you need to watch. Hopefully you are on the Google Classroom now. That's should be how you're getting these videos unless a friend sent them to you. Make sure you contact me if you still need to be on the Google Classroom. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you about satire. It's a pretty fun concept once you get it. I had trouble with it for a really long time, but I'll explain it to you and then I'll explain to you how I got it. Okay, so the definition of satire is it's a technique employed by writers to expose and criticize foolishness and corruption of an individual or a society by using humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule. Okay, so what that means is satire pokes fun at people, at society, and blows things a little bit out of proportion, exaggerates them to make them funny, and to make fun of how society works. It's about punching up instead of punching down. I've heard it described to me that way. Punching down is when you make fun of people who have less power than you. You make fun of people in minority groups and things like that. But punching up is when you're making fun of the people who are in power. You're making fun of society and making fun of the things people do that are really foolish or really not very smart. And that's what satire does. Okay, and satire is meant to improve society. So by making fun of different things that people in society do, satire hopes to show people how ridiculous those people are and convince you not to do those things and to try to convince the people who are doing those things to please stop. So that's what's important. Satire and irony are also mixed up together. So satire irony is the difference between what is said or done and what is actually meant. Writers use satire to point out the dishonesty and silliness of individuals in society and criticize them by ridiculing them. So a satire is a form of irony where in a satire someone is saying something but it's meant to be funny. It's not meant to be taken seriously, and that's the ironic part of that. I'll do a whole nother video on irony so that you understand that a little bit better. Okay, and then so satire in life, you might have seen like political cartoons, and those are satires. I'll make sure I'm going to teach you some of those. And then if you've seen any shows like The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, The Larry Sanders Show, all of those shows are satires. So you can always look those up. I'm not sure I'm going to teach those. But there's also a whole lot of satire in literature. So one of my favorite satires, this is how I really started understanding it, was Treasure Island by Sarah Levine. I love this book. It's funny, my professor who initially introduced me to this author and to this book, he hates it. And he taught it to his class and his class hated it. But when I was teaching my college students, I taught this book. I made them all buy it, which was really funny because it's out of print, which means it's really difficult to get. And the bookstore got really angry at me. That's a bit of a tangent. So the main character of this book is honestly just a terrible person. She's a raging narcissist from start to finish. She only thinks about herself. But this book is a satire of how people would take like self-help books or like different books of literature, anything like that, and try to live their lives and change themselves based on these books. And so this character takes Treasure Island, which is a very old book, and then tries to live her life by the values of it. So Treasure Island is a children's book. It's about pirates. And so some of the it's like some of the things she's trying to live her life by, it's like horn blowing. And what does that even mean? Let's see. Yeah, boldness, resolution, independence, and horn blowing. And like, what does that even mean? So, and then she takes it a little too far, and she's already a pretty terrible person at the beginning of the novel, and then by the end she's even worse. And so it's sort of like a satire. So it's a satire of how these self-help books are not actually all that helpful, and instead they just make you worse. So not to put a whole lot of stock in them. Okay, so now I'm going to read you some satires from a website called The Onion. It takes news articles and makes fun of them and makes fun of what's going on in society. I'm going to read you some actually about the coronavirus, because if you were in my class Q3, we've already read about it and it's all over the news, so you should know a lot of the stuff going on already and be able to recognize the satire. So the first one I'm going to read to you is: defiant 123-year-old not going to let coronavirus stop him from hanging out with his friends. Okay, so defiant means you're not going to listen to what other people have to say. So this 123-year-old, he's going to go hang out with his friends, and you can't tell him otherwise. Okay. Baltimore. Stressing that the pandemic represented nothing more than mass hysteria dreamed up in the newspaper, 123-year-old Milton Hammond told reporters Thursday that he was not going to let the coronavirus stop him from hanging out with his friends. So he's not going to stop the coronavirus from stopping him, or he's not going to stop hanging out with his friends because of the coronavirus. And mass hysteria is something, I would describe it as people believing something that's not true, but getting really worked up and upset about it. But the coronavirus is not that thing, obviously, based on our news. Okay, and the article continues. Everyone is panicking about this thing, but as far as I can tell, this is just the periodicals blowing a little flu out of proportion, said Hammond, who was born in the late 19th century, noting that after surviving the Great Baltimore Fire, 1918 Spanish flu, and an extended period living in a Maryland-based Hooverville, he felt fine stepping out for a little drink and pinochle over at his buddy's place. They say I need to stay inside to protect my 100-year-old children and 75-year-old grandchildren, and I get that. But come on, we're all going to be fine. Plus, I've already been on a ventilator for the past few decades, and it really isn't a huge deal. Anyway, I promise you this. We're going to look back on this in a couple years when I'm 125 and laugh. At press time, the centenarian had died immediately after opening his door and being exposed to the outside world. So obviously he had quite a bit to worry about, because centenarian means like he's over 100 years old, and he immediately died. Okay. And now I'm going to read you the next one. What's in Congress's coronavirus stimulus bill? After days of frenzied negotiation, Congress paid a $2 trillion stimulus package to address economic issues caused by the coronavirus, the largest such aid package in U.S. history. The Onion takes a look at what's in this stimulus bill. Direct payments of $1,200 for single Americans, $2,400 for married couples, and $3,000 for those playing the field. $32 billion to an airline industry that charged you for a blanket on your last flight. Paywall taken off U.S. Unemployment Office website. More protections than you'd think necessary to safeguard American people from their president. Lot of money the government has spent decades telling Americans it didn't have and couldn't spend. Probably something that sounds very good and turns out to be very bad. $5 to Senator Ron Johnson for winning betting pool that Rand Paul would get virus first. Every family will receive $500 per child, but officials may not come to collect the children until May. Federal aid for independent contractors, such as Uber drivers and assassins. A stern reminder that this is a one-time thing. Okay, and so for those of you that don't know, an assassin is someone that kills other people. And this one I find particularly funny. Every family will receive $500 per child, but officials may not come to collect the children until May. So it's making it seem like the government is buying people's children, which is disturbing, but also funny. Okay, and then I'm going to read you one more. Okay. Violently bored Americans begin looting puzzle stores. So people are stealing puzzles from stores. That's what looting means. Norwood, New Hampshire. Isolated and desperate for a fun new hobby or pastime in the face of social distancing measures implemented to fight COVID-19, hysteric mobs of violently bored citizens have begun looting puzzle stores across the country. Sources confirmed Friday. People were grabbing up the jigsaws, the crosswords, the Sudokus, even climbing over each other to get to the Rubik's Cubes. If you can believe that, said Howard Beeman, owner of the now devastated Peacetime Puzzles, one of several hundred such specialty stores that reportedly had their windows smashed and saw their entire inventory seized by panic Americans stuck at home and in dire need of a suitable diversion. Probably did $10,000 of damage to my establishment alone. I watched someone punch an old woman in the throat just to get her hands on a book of riddles. But I've always said there's a real ugly side of humanity that comes out when people are faced with a limited supply of that 5,000-piece landscape scenes and decide to turn on one another. At press times, reports indicated that online resellers were offering 500-piece jigsaw puzzles of cats sleeping on bookshelves for $800 each plus shipping. Okay, so what I want you to do, I have a worksheet for you on Google Classroom, and I want you to talk about what these articles are satires of, what is happening in the country right now that is making people write these articles on The Onion. I mean, if you need hints, I can give those to you. Like, I want you to look at grocery stores, the stimulus package, and young people's reactions to the coronavirus. And you can look some of those things up if you don't already know some of the things or haven't seen the news or haven't been on Facebook. But I mean, if you've been watching the news, these three articles are pretty clear about what they're making fun of and what the satire is about. So I want you to write about comparisons, like what this is making fun of, if you think it's funny, if you think it's not funny, and why. I'll make sure that that's up on the Google Classroom by at the very latest the middle of Monday. Okay, I hope you all have a good week. I'm taking it a little easier on you this week because I want you to finish writing your papers. That will help quite a few of your grades a lot. I'm thinking about putting it in as the final exam grade because there isn't going to be a final exam. So I'm going to make sure that everything up on the Google Classroom has like your papers, like all those assignments on there, so that you can improve your grades for quarter 3 this week while I get more people in the Google Classroom. And then next week, we're going to dive right into it. Okay, so I will see you next week. Contact me with any questions. I'm going to start having office hours and things like that. So make sure you use them. Please use them. Okay, bye everyone.